We are talking Creep Encounters. This is written and directed by Jason Brown. It is originally known as Creek Encounters, but now Creep Encounters. So that one letter makes all the difference. So this is a low-budget British movie, and by the poster you'll be forgiven for thinking it's a giant spider movie. And although this movie does feature giant spiders, it's actually more along the lines of a British version of The Faculty, or perhaps Invasion of the Body Snatchers to a certain degree. The story focuses on this school, and there is a UFO crash site just that happens to have crash landed nearby to this school, and we're told these aliens are, piloting this ship, and they had these kind of arachnid-like creatures in containers, and these kind of spiders are effectively like bioweapons used to infect the local populace and turn them into kind of controlled alien-like hybrids, I guess. And it's up to a group of students and teachers who are trying to hold up and defend themselves as best they can from spiders, infected kind of humans, and try and survive. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So, this is a very low budget movie. I have watched a few of the director's works previously, and this is by far and away his most ambitious project. So let's talk about what I think works in this movie's favour. So this movie has a very nihilistic tone to it, which I feel gives the movie a kind of certain amount of stakes. It's also tonally quite dour, and seemingly kind of, you really feel the sense of hopelessness there is for kind of humanity, because we get lots of kind of characters die, lots of characters get killed or turned into kind of these kind of zombie-like alien hybrids, including children. So it does seem quite, quite the kind of the challenge, you might say. So there is definitely this nihilistic tone to it, which I thought served the movie well. To be honest, this is not like a jokey, campy movie. It's taking itself pretty seriously, and some people might argue that they would have preferred a more camp, sort of fun style movie, but this, I actually thought, gave the movie some stakes. It gave the movie some drama, and I think the movie benefited from that. I would also say there is some acting here that I quite enjoyed. Now, the acting is a mixed bag, and we'll come on to the negative side of it, but there are some performances that I really enjoyed. In particular, I think a lot of the teacher characters here, they were very well realised and just seemed like regular people. Their interactions, their kind of camaraderie, their banter and their candour towards one another, I thought seemed very genuinely real and believable. I thought their reactions to stuff, for the most part, seemed authentic. And these are not like heroes. These are just teachers who have got caught up in this kind of situation and panic, and are trying to do their best to, get around these obstacles that have been put in front of them, and trying to keep children safe. But at the same time, for most of the time at least, the performances I feel seem, for a lot of these sort of teacher characters, seem very real, very authentic, and quite believable. So I kind of liked it, especially when you have to consider this is a very kind of low budget movie. This movie tries to introduce a lot. We've got, we've got giant spiders, we've got mini spiders, we've got infected humans, we've got worm things that infect you. We've actually got, actual aliens, like grey style aliens, as well as kind of military personnel and stuff. So there's a lot kind of going on in this movie. Again, very, very ambitious for such a low budget movie, and you know, it does have a compelling plot to it. I thought the idea here, there's a few plot holes, I won't lie, but the general synopsis and the general idea of the plot I thought was compelling, and despite its limitations, particularly in regard to budget, I still found this movie a compelling story, and I wanted to see you know, where this story would go and who would survive, because the movie, I think, does a good job also of not really giving you the typical sort of like, oh, we know who's going to live. I think a lot of because this is more of an ensemble cast, a lot of the characters kind of get a equal amount of screen time in this until they kind of get whittled down. So we never really know who's going to kind of end up being the, you know, the final sort of characters and things. So it has a sense of, you don't know where it's going to go, which I kind of quite liked. So let's talk about what I didn't like. Now let me start off with some technical elements first of all. This movie is very dark, and I mean it's literally dark, as in you can't really see very much. Think like Aliens versus Predator Requiem, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about here. Now unusually it looks like it's been darkened because it has that kind of sheen when you often see like day for night shots, if you know what I mean. It has like this kind of like greyish kind of sheen over the kind of over the picture a lot of the time, and it just makes everything look really dull. I'm assuming they're trying to get across that it's like later in the day or going into the night, but it seems to be more or less over the majority of scenes, even sequences in the daylight outside still have this kind of odd, it looks like like a filter on it sometimes. So the movie seems very muddy in its kind of the way it's presented to us. I'm not really sure if that's like a problem with the equipment or the colour grading hasn't been done or anything like that, but it has this sort of, as I say, this kind of weird grey-like filter over it. I mean, it is a British movie. There is something to be said for British weather, but it wasn't that. It felt like an artificial, like I could say, filter on it. So that's that. There are also some rough edits in this movie, going from one scene to another, or just kind of quick cuts, fades, which I always think is a bit of that's more of a TV thing, when you fade it out of a shot, and it does it quite a lot. For a movie, it kind of looks a little weird. There's some odd, just rough, very abrasive edits. There's some odd framing choices. We'll have like a character in shot and like a huge void like behind them, and you think, oh, something's going to come out of that, and it doesn't. Oh, that was just an oddly kind of framed kind of shot in that case. So yeah, there's some technical elements here that I thought were a little ropey. There's some story elements to me that I just felt were either unnecessary, weren't particularly well explained. For example, we have a character, this girl that turns up, and she's meant to be like a student, but apparently she was dead and has come back to life. We assume because obviously she's infected by the aliens and stuff, but she seems to be able to like disappear at will, and it's kind of like, it's just kind of like left there. It's mentioned again towards the end, but it was an odd thing to introduce, like another wrinkle that didn't seem necessary. Like, we've already got aliens taking over, living people, and they can now bring people back from the dead, and it's just like, it just seemed like an odd choice that didn't really have a lot of context. And if they are bringing people back from the dead, why are they also bringing back, why are they also infecting live people? It seemed unnecessary and kind of confusing, to be honest. So there's that. I mean, there's lots of talk about the aliens and things like that, and we never really sort of get to see much of that in regards to that. So we do get a little bit of sort of telling and not showing. And there's just some elements here where you feel characters sort of, it looked like the direction wasn't particularly strong. There's a scene where a character, one of the teachers, kind of falls over and that black goo starts coming out of their mouth, so we're assuming that she's dying. and they just, no one kind of reacts to it, and it's just like, the acting was good up until that point from these characters. I think the acting from our main characters was pretty strong, to be fair. Even some of the kids, I have to say. Going back to one quick positive thing, one of the things I liked about the child actors is they seem young, as in the way they talk and the way they are trying to explain things. Their explanations seem like of the correct age. Like they don't really kind of like make sense in the way an adult does, if that makes sense. That I kind of quite liked. And there are a couple of, I say, younger actors who I think do an okay job, but there are a smattering of actors here and there that I think are on the poorer side. It is a low-budget movie, like I have said, and we have these kind of CGI spider shots, and the CGI is fairly obvious. Now, they have kept the spider shots to a minimum, so if you are going into this wanting a giant spider movie, there's not much of that in this film, which is a little bit of a disappointment for some perhaps, but the CGI is quite apparent that it's relatively rudimentary CGI. The effects budget clearly wasn't huge on this one, and you can kind of tell when you see the actual sort of CGI spiders and stuff like that. As we go on, plot points I think are a little muddled and don't make entirely a lot of sense. I think the movie's trying to cover a little bit too much ground. You know, it just has a sort of rough and ready look to it and feel to it. Some of the audio isn't brilliant, just the kind of the way it's sort of put together, it feels a little bit sort of rough and ready. So I think the idea is solid, maybe a little bit too ambitious. I like some of the characters, I like some of the performances, but there are some holes in the story here, and I think the presentation of it looks a little bit too low budget maybe for some. I am going to give this a 4 out of 10 because of that, because I just think the general, the way this film is put together overall, I think is intriguing, but not quite, it doesn't feel like it's a finished product in some ways. But it's still, I think there's some elements here to enjoy, especially if you like a bit more of a darker movie in some ways, and I mean that in more than one way. So yeah, if you've seen this, please let me know what your thoughts are, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.